Welcome to week 1 of project management. This week, we're going to look at the specific nature of IT projects. We want to understand why information technology projects are organizational investments that drive planned organizational change and how they align with an organization's business strategy. We also want to define basic concepts like project and project management and understand the relationship among project portfolios, programs, and projects. We will also be looking at how the disciplines of information technology and project management have evolved together and understand why some projects fail and how to improve the likelihood of project success. Let's start with the history of project management. As you can see, formal project management started in the 1950s and 60s with high-risk, high-visibility programs that simply could not fail. For example, the Apollo space program. As computers became mainstays in American businesses and many employees became knowledge workers, the demand for a secure and available information technology that would keep pace with technological developments increased. And today, we live in an age of globalization and BYOD, in which IT security and reliability are key to any kind of business operations. This is where an organized approach to managing IT projects becomes so important. This approach must define not just the goal of the project, but its other parameters as well, especially the funding and the time it will take to execute the project successfully. But what does success really mean? This is where the Standish group comes in. Every year, this group of leaders in the project management field publishes a report called the Chaos Report. In it, the group describes measures for IT project success. For example, traditional success is on time, on budget, and on target. Modern success is on time, on budget, with a very satisfied or satisfied customer. And pure success is a very satisfied or satisfied customer and a very high value or high value return. And then the group measures the outcome of about 50,000 IT projects against these measures. As you can see on this graphic, between 2004 and 2009, the numbers have not improved at all. While in 2004, 66% of all projects looked at were either challenged or failed, in 2009, even more, namely 68% had these problems. What were the problems? Well, mostly doability, it seems, with only 67% of functionality delivered on average, followed by blown deadlines and cost overruns. And wouldn't you believe it, in the 2015 report, as of the making of this video, the last one available for free on the internet, the numbers haven't improved at all. In fact, they got worse. From 68% in 2009, we went to 71% of challenged or failed projects in 2015. While naturally the growth of IT triggered more projects, why the decline in project quality? Here are the major reasons the Standish group found for project decline, from unclear objectives and constantly changing project goals to unrealistic expectations and lack of funding, involvement, or even interest by management and end users. And what good is an IT project outcome if the end user refuses to actually use the new system? That kind of project does not produce value, it just eats up time and money. Here we see the major project failure categories. They are, starting from the left, people, that is the stakeholders of a project with varied roles and interests in the project's success or failure. These stakeholders and their expectations obviously must be managed. Then we have processes. This includes having a set of project management and of product management processes, so that in the end we end up with a product, a system, or a service that has been put together exactly as described by our stakeholder and with the right quality, in the right time frame, and with the right amount of money spent. Then we have technology. Now, only 3% of IT project failures can be attributed to technical challenges, but this percentage actually increases if obsolete, unproven, or incompatible technologies are used. And lastly, we have organization. Organizational issues can lead very much to project failure. This includes a lack of clear direction, improper strategy, rapidly changing business environment and or customer needs. All of these can create a moving target for the project's product or service. So now that we have looked at project failures, let's consider the benefits of structured IT project management and the reasons for the growth of this discipline. Naturally, organizations need to keep pace with technological change, and that IT project managers are here to address this need by leading successful IT projects. We want to execute these projects better, faster, and cheaper to help enable our organizations to thrive. It doesn't make any difference if the products are large, like building an international airport, or small, like a software release. If we learn how to use the proper project management tools in the proper ways, we can greatly increase the likelihood of a successful project outcome. That is because structured project management prepares an organization for success. It ensures that any IT project that is being funded also provides value to the organization. And that value is focused on not just satisfying the users or customers, but getting them really excited about using the product or service we have built, and thus making them more effective and efficient in their work as well. Lastly, by using a structured process framework for project management and by documenting our successes as well as our failures, we can learn from past mistakes and develop new best practices that make our projects, you guessed it, even better, faster, and cheaper in the future. This is why PMI, the Project Management Institute that sets the global standard for project management, has developed its Project Management Body of Knowledge, also called PMBOK Standard Version 6. This PMBOK Standard Version 6, as of a couple of years ago, has become a global ANSI standard. PMI also administers the most sought-after project management certifications in the world, such as the Project Management Professional or PMP certification and a few of its derivatives that focus on risk management, schedule management, program management, and more. In Europe and Asia, you may also sometimes encounter the Prince2 standard, which is a little more prescriptive than the PMBOK standard, but is also used widely. As already said, the PMBOK, which is at version 6 as of the making of this video, is the current ANSI standard for excellence in project management. Its 49 processes are designed to give project managers valuable tips and tools to help them be successful across all phases of a project, from the glimmer in the boss's eye to the smile on the end user's face. So now let's talk about why we do IT projects. As you can see on the right side of the screen, the major goal of each project is to add value to an organization. Why? Because the environment changes drastically every day. Customers want different things. The competition may be planning a really cool new product, or law and technology have changed. This means that organizations need to react to these changes, or preferably even foresee them, so that with the help of your IT project, they can be at the forefront of bringing change to the market and shaping the economy by their rules rather than following somebody else's rules. How to get to this point is usually laid out in an organizational strategy and priorities report, which can bear names such as Vision 2030 or 5-year plan or something like that. This is the big black arrow in this graphic inside the green rectangle that shows the organizational boundaries. This organizational strategy determines the more tactical objectives, here shown as a yellow curved arrow on the left, that break the organizational priorities down into smaller tactical goals. Once we know these tactical goals, we can start figuring out the practical steps of turning them into reality. This includes dividing them by functional areas into separate portfolios and by practical considerations such as shared resources in terms of people, labs, facilities, or even end users into programs. Once we are at the program level, we can start describing specific technical initiatives as means to make the strategic and tactical priorities happen within a specific technological change for a specific group of stakeholders. And voila, we're at the project level of the organization, here shown as the blue boxes. These projects then must be designed and executed to address these strategic and tactical priorities for the intended stakeholders. And that produces the value that will drive the organization forward. This is where the cycle starts over and over again. As we saw on the previous slide then, projects that address an organization's strategic and tactical priorities cannot be free. They require time, money, and resources in order to produce the intended value. That value manifests itself in changes to the existing relationships between an organization and its customers and suppliers, as well as among the people within an organization. In other words, value is the end game for any project. Now that we understand the connection between the larger C-level organizational strategy and priorities and an individual project, here are the official definitions issued by the Project Management Institute of what a portfolio and a program really are. A portfolio consists of projects or programs grouped together to facilitate effective management to meet strategic business objectives, not necessarily interdependent or related. Portfolios are shown in gray. And a program is a group of related or interdependent, that means they have a common outcome or collective capability, projects managed in a coordinated way to obtain benefits and control not available from managing them independently. Programs here are shown in beige. This brings us to the one sentence from the PMBOK all serious project managers have memorized and can recite in their sleep. A project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. So let's break this down. A project delivers a result, often a product or service, or a series of deliverables, really. It is a temporary endeavor, so it has to deliver the project within limited amounts of time and money. It is unique, so a project of a single nature happens only once. That is, by the way, the difference between projects and operations. Lastly, a project is a vehicle for achieving an organization's strategic plan, either by itself or through inclusion in a portfolio or program. And what is project management? Well, you can see the official definition here. It's essentially the herding of all the cats into the same direction in order to make a project happen successfully. So what are all those cats? Well, traditionally, project management has been defined as successful management of what is called the triple constraints, namely the time it takes to produce the product, service, or result, the nature and size of that product, service, or result, that's called scope, and the amount of money it costs to produce the product, service, or result. Those are still the main categories by which organizations traditionally measure product outcome, but there are really many more cats to herd. Those are the quality of a product, service, or result that we can plan and later confirm by testing, the resources, that is the people we need to select in order to get the right skills on our team whenever they're needed, and above all, the level of risk on any project. Because the more we know about all the things that could potentially go wrong, the better we can prepare ourselves for those potential issues, and the more we can increase our chances of completing our project successfully. That said, many of these cats that project managers need to herd come down from portfolio management. That includes the risk of changing strategic business objectives, for example, that may require a change in the direction a project takes, or changes in legislation that may require extra testing cycles, or previously unplanned technical safeguards. This can also happen at the program level if, for example, a new business is acquired and new employees with a different organizational culture join your team. All of these are called enterprise environmental factors and can influence your project success positively or negatively. So now that you're probably already pretty paranoid about ever becoming a project manager, where can you turn for help? Well, more advanced organizations typically have project management offices, or PMOs, that administer the organization's project management rulebook. This rulebook is often called a methodology and helps you identify who is who in the organization, who gets to approve what and when, what your project budget should look like, and where your numbers are coming from, and who they're going to, and many, many other things. A good methodology is, in fact, a step-by-step guide that has been refined over time and on the basis of the learnings from many failed projects and should help you take your first steps into the role of a project manager. In many cases, a PMO also maintains a library of templates or organizational process assets, such as a schedule template, a change request template, various approval templates, etc., so that you won't have to make up your own. Often, these OPAs exist on the intranet as the front end of a database because, you guessed it, any information that you enter as a project manager will be aggregated with information from other project managers of other projects in the same program or across programs and portfolios in order to measure organizational progress. And if you don't have any of this, well, there's always the knowledge you gain from this course. So as I said, if you have a project management office in your organization, count yourself blessed because your job just got so much easier. The PMBOK describes the PMO as an organizational body or entity assigned various responsibilities related to the centralized and coordinated management of those projects under its domain. Most of those responsibilities are really to help you, the project manager, be successful. This means methodology, templates, training, political help, which you may need at some point or at many points in your project lifecycle, or also just sometimes a resource for your questions or a sounding board for your frustrations. Project management offices are great resources. Use them. Another great help and a huge time saver are organizational process assets, which are defined as any and all process-related assets that can be used to influence the project success and to provide guidelines and criteria for tailoring the organization's processes to the specific needs of the project. In other words, templates, software, code archives, even lessons learned, all of the organizational knowledge that has been captured about similar projects to the one you've been asked to lead. Use organizational process assets wherever you can. They are a huge time saver and will help you avoid mistakes. One of the big buzzwords in any kind of project methodology and supported by multiple organizational process assets is the concept of project phases. Now, let's not confuse that with the software development lifecycle, which is only a part of these phases. Project phases cover the entire project lifecycle. The software development lifecycle, or SDLC, covers exactly what it says, the product lifecycle, nothing more and nothing less. In other words, in this course, we're talking about the entire project lifecycle, which is much bigger than just the SDLC. According to PMI, the project lifecycle falls into 5 phases. Initiating, in which the business case and the initial plan for a project is nailed down. Planning, in which we plan the schedule for design, development, testing, user training, rollout, handover to the help desk, and much more. Executing, in which we actually do the work, and this is where the software development lifecycle has most of its activities. Monitoring and controlling, in which we check on a daily or weekly basis if we are building the right thing and if we are on time and on budget. And finally, closing, in which we archive all our documentation, ensure the help desk is trained, and that our users are ready and excited to use what we have delivered. Within each of these phases, we have to manage 10 knowledge areas. First is project integration management. This includes the processes and activities that integrate the various elements of project management. It consists of developing project charter, developing the preliminary project scope statement, developing the project management plan, directing and managing the project execution, monitoring and controlling project work, very importantly, integrated change control, and closing the project management processes. The second knowledge area is project scope management, which describes all the processes involved with ascertaining that the project includes all the work that is required and only the work that is required in order to complete the project successfully. The third knowledge area is project time management, which describes all the processes concerning the timely completion of the project. And then number 4 is project cost management, which describes the processes involved in planning, estimating, budgeting, and controlling costs, so that the project is completed within the approved budget. Number 5 is project quality management, which describes the processes involved in assuring that the project will satisfy the objectives for which it was undertaken. Number 6 is project resource management, which describes the processes that organize and manage the project team. This includes resource planning, acquiring the project team, hiring and firing, developing the project team, and managing the project team. Number 7 is project communications management, which describes all the processes concerning the timely and appropriate generation, collection, dissemination, storage, and ultimate disposition of project information. This includes how to communicate with people, when, with what media, and what to include. Number 8 is project risk management, which describes all the processes concerned with conducting risk management on a project. That includes risk management planning, risk identification, qualitative and quantitative risk analysis, risk response planning, and risk monitoring and controlling. And knowledge area number 9 includes all the processes to purchase or acquire products, services or results, and contract management processes as well. Lastly, knowledge area number 10 concerns project stakeholder management, and this includes specifically how to interact with the various stakeholders of a project. So now that we have dealt with a technical introduction to project management, we need to talk about the biggest factor onto a project success or failure: the human side. The role of a project manager is, in fact, less technical, that's what the engineers are for, than it is political. As project managers plan, organize, and control project work, they have to constantly communicate with all sorts of project stakeholders, from the vice president of finance, also often known as the money man or money woman, to the intern, who may be working as a QA tester. This means constantly dealing with different people from different organizational levels and cultures, and sometimes also with people who you may never see face to face, from other states, from other countries, from other time zones. That, in fact, is the art of project management: to build a team. That is, to assemble people around a common purpose, performance goals, and approach, and to motivate and guide them along that purpose on the one hand, but to empower them on the other hand, so that they activate their superpower of mutual accountability. This makes the project manager really the servant to the team, and the project management job one in which the PM needs to know when to defend the team, how to get the team the resources they need to be successful, and most importantly, when to get out of the way. Getting the balance between these three behaviors right is a large part of the art of project management. According to the PMBOK, project managers can find themselves in three basic organizational structures. The functional organization is on one end of the political spectrum. The projectized organization is on the other end. In the functional organization, all the power rests with the managers who own the people in their departments, such as the IT manager, the operations manager, and the marketing manager in the graphic on the left side. The project manager here really has no hiring and firing or even decision power, and project managers is just a task among other daily work tasks. On the other end of the political spectrum stands the projectized organization. Here, the project manager has all the power, including hiring and firing staff and making serious financial decisions. In the middle between the functional and the projectized organization stands the most frequently used organizational structure, the matrix organization. In the matrix organization, basically every person has two bosses, a functional manager and the project manager. Both share in hiring and firing activities and both make decisions in concert with each other. On either end of the spectrum, you have the weak matrix and the strong matrix. In the weak matrix, the project manager is often called a project expediter or project coordinator, and it is very similar to the functional organization. In the strong matrix, the project manager is part of a project management department, which often also encompasses a PMO and whose job it is to empower project managers throughout the entire organization. Major decisions are still made in concert with the functional managers, however, who get to hire and fire the staff in their departments, and any project technical staff is then borrowed from the departments for the duration of a project. That is similarly the case in a balanced matrix in the middle here, only that the project manager is not part of a dedicated project management department, but instead housed in a functional department. This can often feel like you're an island unto yourself, especially if there is no PMO available for support. But in many organizations, this is the most frequent way in which project managers fit into the organization. Here is a great overview of a project manager's role in any of these three organizational types, functional and projectized, and then the three flavors of matrix organization. Please pause the video and take a good look at this table. Remember how the outcome of a project and its final value are only as good as the user's readiness and enthusiasm of using the product, service, or result that the project created? Well, that is true. Another thing is true though as well. Along the way, throughout the project lifecycle, there are many other important people who can influence that value. These are called the stakeholders. The official definition of stakeholders is persons or organizations who are actively involved in the project or whose interests may be positively or negatively affected by the performance or completion of the project. So, who are these people? Well, we have the customers or the users. They can be internal or external and sometimes also in multiple layers. The customers are sometimes not the end users, especially when one customer office functions as the buyer for your projects and the users sit in another customer office. Sometimes you may not interface with these actual end users until the very end of the project, or only with permission by the initial users. Then we have the sponsor. The sponsor is the person or the group that provides the financial resources for the project. The sponsor champions the project to executive management and secures support and buy-in, and he or she leads the project through engagement or throughout the selection process until it is formally authorized and a PM is assigned. The sponsor can be a really valuable escalation mechanism, and he or she has the final word for changes, for kill points, for authorizations, and for everything that concerns the administrative management of the project. Then we have portfolio managers, other program managers. We have the PMO, who can be important stakeholders. And we have, of course, your project team. Those are the engineers that are specifically impacted by any kind of project decisions that you make. The functional managers supply the resources for your project. Those would be all the engineers. Then we have operations management, who is the core business area and is impacted by the completed project that your project management processes produce. They are typically in charge of the maintenance. And then, of course, we have sellers and suppliers and other business partners who provide the services or parts per any contractual agreements. So these are only some of the most important stakeholders for your project. As you may have already guessed, a project manager's job is highly political. Every single day, a project manager has to navigate successfully among the different values, needs, and expectations of all the stakeholders. This means that a good project manager must, above all, be very much in tune with what is often called the company way, and insert the company's name here. This means, too, knowing all the written and, more importantly, all the unwritten rules of communicating with various people, including which people can or should be in one room with one another and which ones shouldn't, or when to schedule meetings and when not to, which departments work well together and which ones don't, all that. This is where your project sponsor, that is the person who holds the financial authority over your project and who is often a more senior employee in this organization, can be of great help to you. Remember above all that your job is to deliver value to the organization. That can often mean figuring out how to steer clear of any political entanglements in an organization and keeping your focus on your project mission. As you may have already guessed, there are various project methodologies and processes within the PMBOK framework. Let's talk about these next. You have already met the 5 big project phases. Initiating, in which we lay out the basics for the project, including its budget, its expected schedule and its scope, and monitoring and controlling, in which we check whether the targets set in the initiating phase are still valid. In between those two, we have our planning phase, in which we develop our detailed project schedule and budget, then the executing phase, in which our software development lifecycle takes place mostly, and the closing phase, in which we ensure help desk and users have been trained and are ready and enthusiastic about using our product or service, and in which we debrief our project knowledge to ensure we and other project managers who come after us can recreate our successes and learn from our mistakes. Those 5 phases exist throughout all sorts of project life cycles, but they can carry other names too. While the traditional PMBOK approach has been the serial waterfall approach, in which one phase happens after the other, more or less, because monitoring and controlling really happen all the time, you may have heard of an alternative iterative model. This model is often also called the agile model, or depending on its execution, Scrum or extreme programming or Kanban, or also other terms. While the phase designations may differ, however, such as initiating and envisioning, for example, and planning and speculating, and while there may be great differences in what happens in each phase, the definition of a project does not change. It still has a beginning and an end, and depending on the level of rigidity in the scope definition, there is planning or exploring and execution or adapting in the middle. Here is a great overview of the 5 phases, and here we see that they don't always have to occur in a serial fashion. While the initiation phase and the closing phase remain the 2 bookends of the process, very often the middle 3 phases can repeat. You can, for example, decide to plan, design, build, test, and release only a part of the entire scope, then move on to the next part of the scope, and so on, so that phases 2, 3, and 4 repeat multiple times throughout a project lifecycle. This could be considered a more agile approach. But the more you step into specific agile approaches, the more there are strict rules for any of these. For example, in Scrum, each unit of steps 2, 3, and 4, also called an iteration, has to occur in a very specific time frame called a time box, and be framed by process meetings before and after each. The metrics collected will then be specific to one of these iterations and be used to compare iterations with one another in terms of work execution, efficiency, and other criteria. In Kanban, there are no time boxes, but the metrics are usually collected based on individual small code modules themselves. As you can see, there are a number of ways in which phases 2, 3, and 4 can be sliced and diced, depending on the size and nature of the project and an organizational preference. The most important thing to remember, though, is that no matter what the iterative structure looks like, the 10 knowledge areas still need to be applied consistently throughout all the phases, with the help of various tools listed in the Project Tools box on the lower right. So, no matter what project structure you get to select, or what your organization prefers, the PMBOK knowledge areas and their 49 processes will translate. Some more, some less. Please pause this video and take a look at the structure here. Our discussion will start with the knowledge area on the leftmost side, Project Integration Management. This is the graphic that will accompany us through all the knowledge areas in this course. In this graphic, time runs from left to right. On the top, you see the 5 project phases from initiating to closing. These are the arrows. In the middle, you see the software development lifecycle phases in the white rectangles, from requirements and design, which often occur parallel to the planning phase, to maintenance, which demarcates the handover to the operations team and usually occurs in or even before the closing phase. At the bottom of the graphic, you see the processes from the first and most integral knowledge area in project management, project integration. Project integration is the umbrella activity that outlines all other project activities, from developing the project charter at its very beginning to directing and managing the work in the execution phase and closing at the end. Here we see how the 3 most operative phases within the SDLC repeat within a more agile or really a hybrid agile model. No matter the actual structure though, the project integration knowledge area remains stable. This applies specifically to directing and managing project work and one majorly important component, perform integrated change control, the second process from the right at the bottom. We will talk about this more when we discuss project scope. For now though, here is what Perform Integrated Change Control stands for. No changes in any of the project parameters, including what you're building and how much of it, how fast you're building it, and how much it will cost without the project sponsors or the product owner's approval. Even more, no changes should ever be made without approval and without documentation. Any changes to your project will require documentation in a change request and approval by your project sponsor or product owner. Why is this important? Remember the triple constraints, and remember that you as the project manager are on the hook to deliver value. This means the project scope, on time, and on budget, so that your users are delighted about their new product or service. We'll stop at this point. Please take a moment and ensure you are able to define any and all of these terms and explain what they mean. And I will see you again for our next module on measurable organizational value and the project infrastructure.